There's an old saying that goes that the circle of a film and how it goes down is completed by what you bring to it. And there's another old saying that you shouldn't let boring people on the internet tell you something and pass it off as fact. Here's the Venn diagram of that. Field of Dreams, for me, is the best movie ever made. From this point onwards, we're going to get into spoilers as I talk about why.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
1989's Field of Dreams, then, a film that, to me, here is a copy of it. I've bought it on so many formats it hurts. Remains my favourite film of all time. Might not be yours, absolutely mine. I think it's an unimprovable piece of cinema. And so it's always, I've worked a lot with people coming through and new writers and stuff like that over the years. And one of the pieces of advice I give to them is, particularly in the AI era where slop is coming out of machines and computers are writing it, you've got to put something of you into it. You've got to put yourself on the line. And so I say that as a warning to you, really, because I've written about this film before. I've talked about it before, but I am an unreliable narrator of this film. Because 1989's Field of Dreams is an enormously important film to me. And it hit me the first time I watched it. And then there's an old, I'm right in cliche corner already. You have to watch a film the first time so you can love it every other time you watch it, and it can't become your favorite unless you have that first interaction with it. And yeah. And so I've tried a lot of times to wrap my head around this. I put on screening of it, and I should note as well, and we're in spoiler territory going forward. So I'll just sing a little spoiler song, just so you know. We're in spoiler territory going forward. If you're still here, there are spoilers soon. Please don't jump forward on the video thingy at the bottom. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Okay, so there's spoilers. And so I am recording this a month and a half after losing my dad. And so this is going to be quite an emotional conversation for me. And so I should forewarn you of that. But let's go back to the very first DVD release. DVDs, remember them? The very first DVD release of Field of Dreams has on it one of the very best making of documentaries for a contemporary film that I've seen. Now, the Field of Dreams has come out on umpteen versions since. The documentary isn't on all of them. I'm just going to have a look, see if it's on here, actually. I'm not even sure it is. It might be, but this is the 4K. This is like the latest physical media release of it. But that documentary, along with something like Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia documentary, the commentary track on As Good as It Gets, Edward Burns' commentary on Sidewalks of New York, a whole bunch of extra features back in the days when there was so much heft put into those, so much work put into those, that dug into how a film came to be. And on this Field of Dreams documentary, writer-director Phil Alden Robinson, who'd, I think at this point, directed one film. He'd co-written All of Me. I think Rhinestone was him as well. I had a coffee with him as well and talked about this at one point. That's as good as my name dropping gets on this. But it told the story of how he captured a book by a man called W.P. Kinsella called Shoeless Joe and brought it to the screen. And it wasn't an easy film for Phil Alden Robinson to make. This isn't a film making of video, but it's worth acknowledging. It was, as Phil Alden Robinson told me, in a Cafe Nero over like a cheap croissant. I was paying. What can I say? He was like a nervous director. Really, he was struggling with the idea of directing, and it was a difficult time for him making the best film ever made. This was a point where too Kevin Costner, the star of the film, was on his way up, but he wasn't quite in the stratosphere, as it were. Dances with Wolves was just around the corner. He'd just done Bull Durham, which hadn't been released at this point. And there was some doubt, really, that Costner would even commit to a second baseball film straight after doing Bull Durham. And he'd go on to commit to a third one a little bit further down the line. So for Phil Alden Robinson, it took him a long time to get Shoeless Joe into a position to get it to the screen. It'd take him even longer to get his next film, Sneakers, to wrestle the script of that into a play. I mean, that in itself is a story and a half. But Kevin Costner gets this script and he just sees something in it. And he's quoted as saying he felt it could be this generation's It's a Wonderful Life. But Kevin Costner's schedule was also absolutely cramped up at this point. He was making a film with Tony Scott called Revenge. Now, he was due on the set of that in, I think it was August of 1988. And so if he was going to do Field of Dreams, he would have to be released from the shoot of it by August of 1988. The problem was that the cameras weren't even due to start rolling on Field of Dreams until May of 1988. So what we're looking at is they've got 3 months to shoot it. And also, they had to grow the crops of the. If you know, I'm assuming you've seen the film. If you've got this far, I mean, I have to make that assumption going forward to talk about what we're going to talk about. There's a cornfield in it with a baseball diamond in the midst of it. I'm from the UK. It's still posh rounders to me, but still, I understand the diamond and how it works. And so they had the problem of growing the crops and getting them ready and having the schedule to hit and blah, 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 blah. All sorts of hurdles just to get the film made. Phil Alden Robinson was feeling the pressure of expectation and just the pressure of directing his first film, his second film, but his first big studio film, really. But just to zero into a couple of things, it really gets right, just from a filmmaking point of view. There's an early scene in Field of Dreams where Kevin Costner, as Ray Kinsella, the main character, is in the cornfield and he hears the voice for the first time. And Robinson grounds his camera. He doesn't move it. And he allows Costner to walk out of the shot and then walk back into the shot. There's a bit in Sneakers where he's just got characters in a room. And I think he undersells himself as a director, really. And the camera moves as he does it all in one shot, while ostensibly it's just characters in a room just talking, make it into a really interesting scene. In the case of this, the simplicity works really well. That we're just frozen looking at this cornfield. In he steps, out he steps, and our view stays still. And I just thought it's such a beautiful way to set it up. And he repeats the trick again when he gets inside the Kinsella house. Amy Madigan plays his other half in this. She is great in this as well. In fact, there's not a bad performance in it. But I'm going to come to her character shortly because she does something amazing in this. But our view is grounded. Now, then there's another simple filmmaking moment, which is a proper goosebump one as well. Go right to the end, where you see a long line of cars, just the lights of cars queuing to get to this cornfield. And there's no, there's no quick cuts. It's just we as viewers just get to slowly absorb what's happening. Cars are coming. Camera simply pulls up. And actually, you go into that making of documentary, and virtually all of they had three takes of it. Virtually all of the cars aren't moving. They just radioed. They had to communicate through the radios in the cars and just blink your headlights. That way it'll look like it's moving. And we'll just have the ones at the start, driving into the car park of the cornfield. Just simple filmmaking stuff. So that's just a bit of the basics of how it was made. For me, I was a teenager when I first saw it. I used to go to the video shop. I used to get these magazines that had the adverts for Guild Home Video. Always used to take the back page of the in-store video shop magazine. There was the advert for this film called Field of Dreams. Rave reviews all over it. But I used to spend my Saturdays, because I was a really riveting child. My mate's dad had a newsagent shop. I'd just get the bus over to his house. We'd go over the road. We'd rent a video. We'd get a drink or a snack from his newsagent shop, and we'd just watch a film. So this is where I watched loads of my underage movies, which obviously I disapprove of. But this, just depend who would rent the videos for us. Field of Dreams was a PG, so we didn't have what we call the RoboCop conundrum. I'm still grateful to the parent of one of my friends who rented both RoboCop and The Running Man at the same time. That's a proper service to a small child, that is. But I sat, truth be told, I sat just as a teenager watching Field of Dreams the first time and thinking, oh, this is pretty good. I'm enjoying this. Is good. It's not the kind of film I usually watch. RoboCop. I wanted to watch that. But okay, and then the ending happened. And I was sat with my friend, I don't know to this day if he saw how much I was breaking when the ending of that film happened. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. I never saw it coming. Never saw it coming. There's a story that an international translation of the title of Field of Dreams, I've never been able to corroborate this, puts the spoiler in the title. And the first time I saw the film, And the first time I heard the line, "You want to have a catch," I mean, it broke me. In fact, breaking me a bit now because my dad was here. You know? And I only read like many years later that it was one line in the script that Costner argued it all came down to: you want to have a catch. And I mean, I've argued and bored and talked to people about. I'm a Kevin Costner nerd, and I'm not blind to the fact that some things he does are good, some things he does are bad. I just can't remember a movie star at the height of their powers who was so good at choosing material. I think it's such an art that's not talked about. Choosing material. And his hit rate of choosing material, particularly the back end of the 80s and the 90s, was off the chart good. I can't think of any actor who chose so many scripts, so many strong scripts, took so many gambles when they had clout as well, and for so much of it to pay off. So this is where I need to talk to you a little bit about my dad, because I mean, he passed at the age of 82, and we're incredibly close by that point. We'd long since settled our differences. They weren't even major differences. It was a teenage kid and a father who was out working a lot of the time. Didn't see him much, didn't see eye to eye with him when I did see him, and he didn't see eye to eye. He didn't see eye to eye with me, and it just went on for many years longer than it should, that there was a distance between us. You know, it wasn't nasty, it wasn't horrible. It was, I was being struggled. I was being bullied a lot at school. I was struggling to find things I enjoy, and I didn't have, I guess I didn't have the link with my dad that I thought I needed at that point. And we talked about it a lot before he passed. And so there's no regrets. We both fully understood where we were and our decisions and stuff like that. But I mean, the bottom line was I was a bit lost, a bit lonely, and this ending happens. Now, just to mitigate this, we weren't completely broken. And I quote the film City Slickers a lot. I think the writers Lau Gans and Babalu Mundell, with their two scripts of Parenthood and City Slickers, was so on the ball with a lot of humanity. And City Slickers, there's a lovely exchange in that where Daniel Stern's Phil talks about how he wasn't really communicating with his dad when he was 18. But he said, we could still talk about baseball. And I do think there's something in it that even when you've got a fractured relationship, assuming there's no nastiness involved, there are olive branch topics you can talk about. So we talk about football a little bit. But I was drifting. I was drifting personally. I was drifting a long way from my father. I didn't understand why. I wasn't trying particularly hard to find out. And then you watch this film. You go and get this video from Kings Heath video shop in Kings Heath in Birmingham. Just another Saturday afternoon. You don't know what you're going to get, and you find you're watching this film about the lengths one man will go to reconnect with his father, and arguably vice versa as well. It is emotionally devastating to me at that point. It remains it, not in a horrible way. Again, I've talked before. One of my favourite, but I know Roald Dahl, all sorts of problems around Roald Dahl. I read his book Danny the Champion of the World when I was 9-10 years old. It had a similar effect on me. So that's sort of, I say at the time, what you bring to a film, that's sort of what I bring to it. And so, yeah, then I left it a while before I watched it again. And because I just thought, I've seen the ending. You look at something like David Fincher's The Game, a film I remember knowing nothing about, watching at an early preview screening, the ending absolutely, great. But then I'm thinking, I can't watch that for another 20 years because now I'll know. It doesn't quite work out like that. If you watch it again, you know, there's all sorts of little bits in there to know. I didn't know that as a teenager. I just thought, you know, by the time they come around saying people will come, I mean, James, people will come, Ray. By the time they start doing that at the end, it won't have the same effect, will it? Because I know what's coming. Little did I know. Now, every time I watch the film, because I know what's coming, I just break earlier each and every time. And I've watched it with my kids. My eldest just thinks it's just rubbish. He just thinks it's a silly film. It's a nonsense. And I sort of get that. I put that to Phil Alden Robinson, just like, yep, I completely understand that. I mean, if you look at the film as well, it's a time travel film at one point, but that's not really talked about, is it? But it travels in time and we just don't even like, oh yeah, hang on. And you just you either buy it or you don't. It's quite binary on this. But it just, now I watch it, and we're getting towards the ending, and I'm gone. And the reason is just the foundations, and the rest of it works inevitably so. And so you go to I look at the opening of Back to the Future quite a lot, because Back to the Future seems, to my eyes, to break quite a lot of screenwriting rules or just storytelling rules, in that the amount of information that is, you call it an info dump now, that is given to you in the first 20 minutes of that film with such density is incredible. And yet you accept it. Do you remember when Adam McKay made The Big Sick, and he just got to a point where, how do I do this? I put Margot Robbie in the bath and tell her. Back to the Future didn't have that get out or anything like that. And the tightness of the writing at the start is pretty much perfect. They put in place all these characters, their motivations, what you need to know, and you are set up with quite a complicated set of circumstances. You accept this weird relationship straight away between Marty McFly and Doc, and it just works. In the case of Field of Dreams, it's as good an example, isn't it, when you look at what's going to happen? Because you've got ghost baseball players are going to have to come back, and we're going to have to accept it. And how are we going to accept it? And what Phil Alden Robinson does in his script is he has our skepticism in it. You look at the way that he writes and posits his film, there's no cynicism to it, but there's enough skepticism in his characters, and they deal with this unusual, wild situation really in different ways. You hear a voice, you level your income, you basically endanger the livelihood of your family, much to the absolute confusion and disgust of family members and people in the town around you. But they've all got their motivations. The opening monologue, it opens with "My father's name is John Kinsella," said by Ray Kinsella, Kevin Costner. We know where his motivation is, and he talks about how at one point Tess says, "I never forgave him for getting old." But there's a line that he said, "We don't recognise life's most significant moments while they're happening." Back then, I thought, well, there'll be other days. I didn't realise that was the only day. I get goosebumps even saying some of this stuff, and I'm doing it with a boring Birmingham accent. You get Ray Kinsella, a man who drifted from his father, and Annie, played by Amy Madigan, he has that conversation. I never forgave him for getting old. There's a sense of a disconnect there, of a man who saw his father not follow his dreams, never did. And Ray Kinsella, as he tells us, he'd never done a crazy thing in his life until he heard the voice. And there's a faith thing in this, I guess. That's not the angle I come at it from, but he hears this voice and he gets this vision to build the field, and he builds it because he wants to believe. And early on in the film, I understand he really wants to believe. I get it. His dad didn't follow his dreams. He didn't follow his dreams because of the sacrifices he made bringing up his son. And if he doesn't follow the voice and he doesn't build the field, then he's his dad. And is that the thing that he's most scared of, becoming his father? Is that worse than the neighbours gawping or the bills mounting up, that he makes the same mistakes his father made? It's so small. I love tiny stakes in movies. I'm all for big sci-fi movies and world smashing, blah, blah, blah. But the smaller the stakes, the more it gets me. I keep citing a brilliant animated film that flies under so many people's radar, Captain Underpants, which was 2016, where the stakes are really tiny. And it's two kids, and it's in a superhero film, you'd think, two kids scared of being put in different classes. What's The Goonies about? It's about a bunch of kids scared of losing their house and being split up. It's not about death. It's not about, that the world is going to end or something like that. It's this tiny thing, scared of becoming his dad. Amy Madigan's Annie, and she's popped up fairly recently in cinema in ways I won't talk about, but if you know, you know. Her role in this is superb. Her performance is superb, because there's a character. Annie could be that very cliched, nagging Hollywood wife, the one who tries to obstruct the character. Just what are you doing that for? You should be here doing that, blah, blah, blah. Just all the cliches of the wife character, as Hollywood like to show us it was. And the film has no shrift with that. And instead, she has this wonderful scene in the midst of the film, at a school meeting with parents going on about banning books, and she has this really lovely line as one of the other parents is banging on about the banning of these books. She just retorts, "I think you had 250s and moved right into the 70s when the conversation's on about the 1960s." She's a crucial character because the film doesn't work if she doesn't go along with this. There's enough obstacles in here, and what I really like is that she sees this absolutely mad idea that the man she loves, what the partner she loves wants to do. She looks at it, she's like, "Yes, that's bonkers. Let's do that." And brilliant. How many other Hollywood films, certainly of the 80s, can you remember where that happens? And it must have been a sod of a scene to write, to be fair. But then, right, again, you go back to a line that Ray Kinsella says. I've tried reading the book, but I can't. I know it sounds terrible, but I bought the book, I started reading it, I just thought I can't, because the film, in a weird way, the film is too special to me, and I like the purity of that. And I hate that argument, even as I'm saying it. But what it means is I can't give you, this is exactly what it was like in the book, because I don't know. One day I'll read it. I'm just not ready for it yet. But Ray is just quiet. There's nothing showy about the way he says it. The man, he says of his father, never did one spontaneous thing in all the years I knew him. Something tells me this may be my last chance to do something about it. And you've got this couple who are clearly in love, following a dream that makes no sense, but it makes sense. It doesn't even make sense to the two of them, but it makes sense that they follow it. And so what it means is, in the midst of Field, we're back at Back to the Future, really. If you look at the first Back to the Future film, there's no inverted commas villain. Biff Tannen in that film, he's not trying to stop Marty McFly. He's just trying to get the girl that he wants at the dance. So there's a villain in the second and the third Back to the Future films. It's a bit more traditional in that. Field of Dreams doesn't have a villain. Perhaps the book banning debate, there's a villain, but that's not like the main thrust of the film. And so the closest we get is Annie's brother, Mark, played by Timothy Busfield. But you sort of get where he's coming from, because he's the only one in the film, well, the only family member of the film who seems to be talking with some degree of common sense, that he sees his sister and his brother-in-law thrown away their livelihood, possibly thrown away their lives. He's holding off partners who want to foreclose on Ray and Annie's business. But his actions aren't villainous. They're caring for a family member. He thinks his sister's made a very bad and intangible decision. He both wants the land, he wants to protect his family, but he's not a villain. And so the setup of this is quite odd, really. Then you get the character of Terence Mann, played by the late, great, wonderful James Earl Jones. Now, in Kinsella's novel, as I understand it, the Terence Mann was originally J.D. Salinger, but J.D. Salinger, an actual author, threatened legal action if his name was used in the film. Instead, we get Terence Mann, which gives them a little bit more wiggle room to play. And also the casting of James Earl Jones, he and Kevin Costner alongside each other is a great comedy act. What a cup of coffee, some cookie. I mean, James Earl Jones' comedy delivery is wonderful. Again, go to Sneakers, where he has a cameo role in that. And he's just, you can tell he's just a gracious stage actor, the way that he lets his mannerisms do as much of the comedy as his words. Yeah. So you've got this core trio who find themselves ultimately on this journey. You get Kevin Costner, James Earl Jones, Amy Madigan, and then also you get a final screen performance from the late, great Burt Lancaster. Now, this was my first introduction to the work of Burt Lancaster. He plays Moonlight Graham, another character here who seemingly lost his dream, but as we learn, had no regrets in his case. He was more in control of his choices. Son, if I'd only got to be a doctor for 5 minutes, now that would have been a tragedy. That's his life, beautifully delivered. Phil Alden Robinson told me that, Burt Lancaster wasn't always the easiest to work with on the film. And there was a bit in post-production where one of Burt Lancaster's scenes was cut back, and Phil Alden Robinson showed him ahead of this, didn't want him to find out by surprise, was really nervous. But Burt Lancaster, all this filmmaking experience, and I basically said, I see what you did there. Good cut. Just tiny little things. But on set, and I've done a full long chat with Phil Alden Robinson where I've talked about this. If you search the Film Stories Simon Brew podcast, the Field to Dreams episode where I got Phil Alden Robinson in, he'll talk you through all of this better than I can. But you've got this bunch of characters who, again, their motivation, you kind of get why they're all doing it, and there's their own different dreams at the heart of it all. And how easy would it have been for this film just to put one angle on what a dream is, right? But it doesn't. Each, I mean, you can tell a really good film, I think, and James Cameron's Aliens is a good example of this, where you get to the end of the first watch of it, you can remember 4 or 5 characters and their names. Right? And it doesn't happen very often because it's a really hard thing to do. This, I didn't just know their names. I knew why they wanted, and this was me as a teenager. I knew why they wanted, what they wanted to do, why they made the decisions that they did. And you get this really moving moment in the case of Burt Lancaster where his dream and his life choices are basically solidified by the bit where young Karen, the Kinsella's daughter, Gabby Hoffman, very early role there, has a fall, and Moonlight Graham steps off the baseball field, crosses the line, and becomes his older self again. Goes off to see his beloved Alicia again. Absolute minimum of fuss. It's a no-brainer decision. He had a dream of being a baseball player. He had a life dream of being a doctor. Would have been a tragedy if he wasn't a doctor. It's just beautiful. And then we get to shoeless Joe Jackson, another actor we've lost, the wonderful Ray Liotta. And the original plan there was cast someone a bit older, and this was before Goodfellas, right? This was before Goodfellas. Phil Alden Robinson said he saw, quote, a sense of danger in Liotta that fitted the character. And so the first meeting we see between Ray Kinsella and Joe Jackson, shoeless Joe, is, again, the unfussy direction and writing of this. It's mainly non-verbal. Costner does the bumbling awkwardness here really, really, really well. Meeting the man who's basically at the heart of his final row with his father's idol, shoeless Joe. And there's the bit where he hits a baseball to him with the real nervousness, and it's just beautifully played. I mean, Costner's put in some terrific performances over the years. I think this is one of the best. I think Tin Cup actually is one of the best as well. That's maybe a chat for another time. But Ray Liotta's performance in this as well is one of his top 5. I think his top 5 is all down the cast list, to be honest. And then what I like about Ray Liotta is how well he reacts as well, and how well he interacts with it. There's the bit where he has the chat with Karen, where she just says, "Are you a ghost?" And just says, well, what do you think? And says he looks real. Just says, well, then I guess I'm real. That's it. No more fuss than that. This is a trusting film. It trusts us as an audience to bring something to it and fill in the blanks. If you don't bring something to it, you're not going to like it. You're not going to get it. It's fine. The rules in the end are quite simple. You cross the line on the field to the farm. It's over. Everyone basically knows they're dead. I mean, they play it as comedy at one point. I'm melting, goes one of the ball players. And, it only explains what it needs to do, what it needs. You look at Groundhog Day and how it never explains why the day repeats. Field of Dreams doesn't explain a single thing more than it needs to explain. In an era where we get prequels, we get TV spin-offs. In fact, there was a talk of a TV series of this fairly recently, with which Phil Alden Robinson was not involved. The resistance to over-explaining is really cherished. Really cherished. I don't need to know how a flux capacitor works in Back to the Future. I just need some fun prop. How do those proton packs work in Ghostbusters? I don't care. I just believe they work. The film trusts me. That trusts me to get it right. So, couple of things before I get to the bit. Costner in this is like really super. I mean, this is like Tom Hanks is often talked about as the modern day Jimmy Stewart. There's a bit of that in Costner here. He says fairly regularly he makes very American films, but there's kind of a worldwide everyman quality to the work that he puts in here. And I can't help but root for him. I can't help but believe this person that he's doing the most bizarre things and making it seem so matter of fact, so logical. And it comes down to he got this eye for an outstanding script and a willingness to commit to it. And it's how many times you get to the end of one of his films and just think there's not something there. He's even if it's missed, he's not swung for something there. Then there's James Horner's score. James Horner, God, I mean, another life lost tragically young. I love so much of James Horner's work. I love Krull. Krull is a wonderful piece of music. The Rocketeer, wonderful piece of music. The track "The Place Where Dreams Come True" at the end of Field of Dreams is one of my 10 favourite pieces of music of all time. I mean, we lost him at 61 in an accident. He was still writing music. His last score was for the Magnificent Seven remake. It shouldn't have worked. It's a really lovely piece of work. And Horner did Quiet really, really well. Listen to his score for Sneakers. He doesn't put noise in for no reason at all. In fact, Phil Alden Robinson said that he knew Field of Dreams was working when he showed James Horner a cut of the film before the score had been put in. And Horner came out absolutely choked up, and Phil Alden Robinson's just like, "We've got something here." I listen to the Field of Dreams score so regularly, it's ridiculous, and I'm always grateful for it. So then we're at one of the best endings, if it gets you, in the history of cinema. I like to go for like a lack of hyperbole. The bit at the end where he sees his dad, and the voice, I mean, you can read it loads of ways, can't you? The voice implies heavily, I mean, the film implies that at one stage, the voice that's guiding him is actually his own. And there's debate and some ambiguity about who the voice is, who's guided him to this point. But then I always go back to, there's a film called Being There, which is it's my favourite Peter Sellers movie, directed by Hal Ashby. It's amazing. And the ending of that is similarly ambiguous. And I remember a piece of writing done by Roger Ebert on it, where he just says, a film is exactly what it shows us and nothing more. And I kind of take it that way. I think the voice is Ray. I think it works either way, but I think the voice is Ray. I think it's a scared child, scared of becoming his father, and then ultimately realizing that his dream is to be reunited with his father. And is this heaven? You know, maybe this is heaven. And then the killer moment for me is when he stops calling his father John and he just shouts out the word dad. This, in other hands, would be the Oscar clip. Well, assuming it won Oscars and assuming they spoiled the film and the Oscar clip. But it's just quiet. Just calls out for his dad. It's the smallest possible moment in the film. A man calling out for his father while this wonderful score plays, and the camera comes back, and you just see them just doing what. I know that it said earlier in the film. Can you imagine that? A kid refusing to play ball with his father, and here they are. They've got that second chance. Maybe this is heaven, indeed. I'm indebted to someone I once worked with, Louisa Mello, Den of Geek, and I was considering back at that time putting on a screening of Field of Dreams and inviting my dad along, because he didn't know any of this. He didn't know what it did for me. And she gave me a terrific piece of advice, because I think she'd just lost her father at the time. She said, I never regretted anything I did with my dad. And I thought, okay. And so organised a screening. It was half full, and I sat by my dad and watched Field of Dreams, and I had to give an intro talk at the start where I just described it. And again, the bloke had no idea what this film did to me and why it was so important and how it was so important to my feelings for him. And I described it to the audience that day. I opened with, thank you for coming to my personal therapy session. And I talked about why this film hit me and why it continues to hit me. And then I just sat next to my father and watched Field of Dreams. And I've never regretted doing it. But the last half hour, I was an absolute mess. I don't think he's ever seen me like that. I don't think he ever saw me like that before or after. But I just couldn't cope. I just couldn't. I just squeezed his hand. And then at the bit where they're playing baseball at the end, I had to go and. There was a film a few years ago, which is, again, it's one of the best films I've seen in recent times, All of Us Strangers, directed by Andrew Hay, starring Andrew Scott, is it Paul Mescal as well? And I was at a screening of that a few months before it came out, and I was sat behind someone who saw where that film was going, and after half an hour was inconsolable, and really, again, I can't spoil the film or give you any hint of it, and I haven't. They just recognised signs in the story and were gone. And I remember walking out an hour and a bit later, they were still like in tears, still great rivers of tears coming down their face at the end. And that was sort of me. Couldn't talk to anyone after this. It took me a little while to compose myself to talk to my dad, and he just sent me an email the following day. And he wasn't one for like gushing. He wasn't like stoic or anything like. He wasn't that. But I guess he'd been as reserved with me as I'd been with him, and he just sent me an email saying thank you. That was a bit special. I read it before I came here, and it was. It's the greatest film ever made to me. And it's a film whose reputation has grown over time. It was liked a lot at the time, but over time it's grown. In fact, like the baseball field in Iowa, is this heaven, now attracts visitors. It's a tourist spot. They had they had an anniversary game, didn't they? And Costner came through the cornfield and threw the first ball. I don't think they invited Phil Alden Robinson, but it is a thing. And it is a thing, I think, for those of us who have sometimes struggled for connection with our parents. And it gets thousands and thousands of it gets thousands and thousands of visitors a year. And baseball games are put on, and people just go just to throw a ball around. If you build it, it will come. But the film knew it. I think people will come, Ray, goes the quote. I love it when Gabby Hoffman says it. I know all the clips are when James Earl Jones says it, and rightly so. But when Gabby Hoffman says it, people will come. Just like I'm gone. God, I'm gone. They'll come to Iowa for reasons they can't even fathom, says Terrence Mann, and it's just this rightly famous speech. And I went to a baseball game, about 20 odd years ago, and they played it. They played his speech about baseball, and you pass over your money without even thinking about it. You find the peace you sometimes lack. You try to remind yourself of all that once was good, and it could be again. Field of Dreams is a hugely special film. I miss my father enormously. I'm about to have my first watching of the movie since he passed, and I hope it's a happy cry, but I know a cry is coming. It just shouldn't work. It shouldn't work. All those elements in it, the big leap of faith, the time travel bit, that why on earth's he doing that? The supernatural bit. That, I mean, if you categorized it, I mean, now they'd look at commissioning it by putting it through a program that would subdivide it into genres and stuff like that. It'd tick all these boxes and make absolutely zero sense. Thank God it makes zero sense. I love it. They built it. We all came to watch it. I'm gonna go watch it again.